All right, friends, welcome back to another episode of the Momentum Focus podcast. You are listening to Amia Freeman, one of the co founders of Momentum Focus. I have made a commitment that anytime I press publish on an episode, it is because God has just a beautiful message that He wants us to embrace. And this episode, as I always say, is no different. Recently, God has really just been nudging me to remind us that we have an invitation to consider the Proverbs 31 woman, not as a striving checklist or a comparison, or a way for us to sit and shame ourselves or should ourselves, but an invitation to consider, like, we've been called into this great space to be well, to live well, and to love well. And I think sometimes we miss that invitation because we're looking everywhere else to figure out what's the standard. Whether we would consider our upbringing or our current culture, somewhere our idea of who we are as women of God, as daughters of God, as just women in general, um, we've we've missed the mark on just our uniqueness, what it means to be strong, what it means to be brave, what it means to, I don't know, be balanced and flexible. Um, and I'm not even professing that I have the answers, but what I am offering you is an opportunity to listen in today and see if this conversation helps you to adjust your focus. Today, we are going to talk about one of my favorite scriptures found in Joshua, where Joshua is invited by God Himself to be strong and courageous. And then God begins to walk him through, what does that even mean? And so we get invited the same way Joshua was invited, to hear what God has to say and then make a decision if we're going to follow in that path. So I've invited on this podcast today a sister that I um, ran into. I ran into her, and it was one of those ones that I was like, oh my word, I feel like I've known her like forever, or potentially like maybe we were like separated at birth or something, because there are too many things that, like, as we got to have this conversation pre-recording to just really understand each other's stories and backgrounds, there were so many moments and I'm like, okay, now I know why God had me reach out to this girl. um but y'all, today, um I'm gonna just let her introduce herself so she can fully tell you her backstory. But she runs a fitness ministry that's called Soulful Motion. And just for the fact that she dances and loves Jesus, I was sold on that. But if she it feels like a sister that I have prayed to find and didn't know that I already had. um, but y'all, I'm gonna introduce you. We'll let her introduce herself fully, but to bring onto the mic, um, my sister in Christ, Amber, because she's a beautiful gift of being able to connect to other women just to hear her speak. The kindness that falls off of her is a Proverbs 31 kindness. And like, y'all, like, this is what we get to look for in each other. My mentor says, when you get in the company of people, call the gold up in them. And I honestly believe that calling up the gold is just listening, because if you listen, you will hear the goodness of God in someone. So I'm gonna quit talking and I'm gonna turn the microphone over to Amber Mayfield from Soulful Motion. Amber, introduce yourself, tell the people who you
Ooh,
are.
that was a lot. I might have a tear, and I got a lot going on in me. Um, thank you, Amia. It is for me. It feels just so good to just be with another woman, like you said, who just has God on their hearts and minds, and so I'm just really grateful that I'm here to share this space with you as well. Um, just like you said, I am the founder and director of Soulful Motion, which feels really strange to say because I think in our conversation that we said before, like, business is not where my heart is, or like running this isn't where my heart always is. It's always on God. And so I'm just grateful to be present. That's just a title that I have, but not where my heart is all the time. Soulful Motion is a Christ-centered group fitness class, and we combine praise, worship, and fitness. And that's just it. It's an amazing, amazing community of people um, who really focus on Proverbs 27:17 of just sharpening each other. I love the fact that with sharpening, iron sharpening iron, there has to be friction and heat and tension and all of these things. And I listened to that this morning in my Bible app, and I was like, that is Soulful Motion. Like, it's so great. And just to have that community of people where we are together, we are getting better together and using each other to be better in our community, it just fills my whole heart.
Yeah, that's so good. Just even we were talking in another group about this invitation of iron sharpening iron and recognizing that it's not like a cotton swab like dabbing you, right? It's
Right.
not just like really gentle, like they're there, but it
No.
is this like rubbing up against, bumping up against, almost like literally sandpaper or grinding.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You've ever seen an axe being sharpened, you
And
see
sparks.
sparks, right? The sparks,
Yeah.
like, whoo,
Yeah.
okay,
Yep.
right? And if on the outside, if you're not the axe or the person that's doing the sharpening of the axe, you're watching and you're like, let me back up because something might get
Jump
on
on you.
me
Or you gonna get some of that. If you're too
if
close.
you're too close, right? Which could preach a
Right.
whole other message, right? But just to know that, like, that is an invitation from God to, like, for iron to sharpen iron,
Yeah.
that we get to come into community together. There's a season where we will come together where, like, the Bible says, like, weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. But also don't forget that there is an invitation that we get to call each other up, not call each other out, but
Right.
call each other up to sharpen each other, to remind each other of, like, you were running a good race. Who cut in on you? But
Mm.
then to also, like, wherever God has given us wisdom, to not hoard it for ourselves, but to share it with each other so that we can sharpen that other person's iron.
Yeah.
Um, I know one thing, I was talking to a friend and we were talking about why relationships with women are so challenging because, so for those of y'all listening on the podcast, as I said that, both of our eyes got big, like, whew, that's a
Head
whole,
shaking.
right, that's a 3-part series. Right?
Yes.
But just this space of relationships, from, female relationships have always been such, um it's been such a challenge. And I remember reading a book years ago, by Stacey Eldridge. It's called Captivating. And if
Mm.
you've never read it, it's a beautiful, beautiful story just about just this plan of the enemy to rob us of community, like what you mentioned that you are building within Soulful Motion. The enemy has tried his best to rob us as women from having that community and that camaraderie because he wasn't allowed to own it.
Yeah.
And because he wasn't allowed to own it and was kicked out of heaven, he went after Eve, not
Mm.
Adam. And
Mm-hmm.
his continuous journey is to attack women. Yes, he attacks men, but he has it after women with a
That's
vengeance.
good. With
And
a
with a
full
vengeance,
vengeance.
a full out vengeance, because of our beauty,
Wow.
because his pride is what kicked him out of heaven, right? He was the most beautiful of all the
Beautiful.
angels.
Mm-hmm.
So he has it out to rob women of their beauty and their femininity. He also has a vendetta against women because we were created with the purpose of reproduction, and he has an inability to reproduce anything. right? All
Ooh.
he can do is duplicate and mimic what was already created. And because we are in God's image, able to procreate, he has it out for us.
Mm.
Like a double whammy of like, man,
Mm.
right? So if he can put us against each other, he's like, oh, I can win this one because all I have to do is get her to compare herself to her.
Listen.
Right. So you talk about like teenage angst. Oh, it started at birth.
Right.
It started at birth for him to really just try his best to just shut us down, to get us to look in the mirror and say, I don't like what I see, to
And
see
it's
the next
starting so
woman.
early
So
now.
early.
My baby, she'll be 4 in April, and even just some of the things that, I hear her say or do, is just it's starting way early, with iPads and all the things that they have these days. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and that I tell you, like, just as a back story, like, that's kind of the heart behind even opening up this platform to have conversations with women that were not just me and the microphone, to really break down that barrier of this is not a Mia's podcast. It just so happened that he nudged me and then I opened up the microphone, and I really want this space to be for whoever's on the other side of the mic, right? Whoever's across the table from me, or
yeah,
whoever's on the listening side, to know this is our space. That this, like, because we live in such a culture of comparison,
mm,
and we live in a culture of like one upping each other, even in the vein of like, oh, your poverty was that, I bet you I can top
well, like,
that.
like,
Right,
why do we need to do
right,
that? And
right.
I know you and I have talked before just about women, just even in our industry or just fitness in general, even just you contacting me was like, huh? What? Like somebody's talking to me because for some reason we can't share any information for whatever reason, or fear of this or that comparison piece of, well, what is she doing or how is she doing it? And then you add in the social media piece, well, how many followers or how many likes? And it is too much and unnecessary and not where God wants us to be. And I think, you and I chatted before just saying that why would God give one person this vessel to bring people closer to him? It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, and just like if you think about like this crushes comparison when you consider that there's a message that God needs to speak because of his bigness and because of all that he needs to say. It would be impossible for one person to carry that and not be God himself,
Hmm.
right? Just from a universal perspective of recognizing that, like, I am not in Michigan where you are.
Right.
So, like, there are a group of people that I'll never reach, right? I'm not in Africa. I am not in Switzerland. I am not in London. And
Right.
so there are people that God is going to need in those geographical locations to
Right.
be able to serve that community of people because there's a connection that they have to the people around them, both geographically, economically,
Mm-hmm.
skin color, like whatever it might be that God needs that we hold individually, that no one else can do it the way we do it, not because we're awesome, but because there's an immediate connection to my story and God that no one else has.
Right.
There's an immediate story between you and Jesus and the kind of mercy that he gave you that I will never have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's zero, it literally is like trying to compare like bananas to a pair of high heel shoes.
Right. Don't fit.
Right, there's like zero
There's no
connection, like,
connection.
right?
Yeah,
No connection other
right.
than the fact that they are both objects, right?
Yeah,
Created objects.
yeah.
Um, but something you said earlier just about like just having a ministry on mission and like the ministry of movement
Hmm.
and how it just, I don't know, like for me, and I'm sure you can relate to this, like movement is just this gift of watching God do his work. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And it's like a, like in Romans where it says like present your bodies as a living sacrifice. This is your most reasonable worship.
It's it's so funny that you say that because I have these things in my mind sometimes where I'm like, oh, I wish I could sing. Like when I hear somebody sing that is like so great, I'm like, oh, if I could sing, I would sing all day long. Girl, that is not your gift. Like that's not for you. Movement is truly what fulfills me and connects me to God, you know. Um, and movement, listening to people who actually do have that gift from God, whether that be gospel or Christian, or whether it be Christian rap or Tamala Man or whoever it might be, movement to worship music for me is what I know that I'm supposed to be doing and what I know that God created me to do with other people.
Yeah, like I mean, even just like as you were talking, you had said something about like just movement is your gift, but
Yeah.
singing is not. And if you there's a song, I forget who sings it, but it's like a, it's not a modern pop Christian song, but it's one of those songs that was released that could have been mainstream music, but then you lean in and you're like, hold on a second, that's a Christian song, right?
Mm,
But it was released like pop music. And
yeah.
in the song, they're talking about all the trials and all the tests that they went through seemed like, you know, calamity and chaos until they stepped back and realized that God was writing a symphony, and using all of the parts individually, they look like chaos, but
Yeah.
together it comes in this beautiful melody, right? And as you were talking about, just the person that's singing, like that's their instrument of praise, right?
Yeah.
Our instrument of praise is movement, and our movement is this interpretation of how we heard God.
Yeah.
You know, like you, if you ever watch, I don't know if you've ever seen Alvin Ailey
Mhm.
dance performance, like to watch their bodies, I'm like, oh, only God would know that that needed to be a thing.
Right.
Like it needed to be a thing.
That don't come from me or people. You like people at all. That is a God-given gift.
Yeah. But then at the on the flip side of that, like somebody's watching your videos and they watch you interpret a Toby Mac song, right?
Mhm.
Like I love to toss out songs to people to do like choreography challenges to say, I want to see how you interpreted this song.
Because it's going to be so different.
It's totally different because we heard it, just like you could read Proverbs 21:17 and you saw an interpretation visually or with words that spoke directly to you, and then you retell it the way you heard it. Same thing happens when it's music and movement. And I joke and I say, like, I hear a song and inevitably my hips will hear bongos or a trumpet. And I think it's just
Yeah.
like the salsa in me. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But
Yes.
then like one of my girlfriends, she is a, her background is Latino Caribbean, so she'll hear it and inevitably she will hear a samba in every song, and I'm like, there's no samba rhythm. She's like, oh yes there is, right? But it's such a gift of like God speaks to us in the language that he knows we'll hear. And to me it feels like modern day parable of
Yeah.
where he has called each of us into the ministry according to the way our hearts have been wired.
Mm.
Um, and it just like for that to me is the invitation to be able to interpret the character of God to other people. where he's called you into this space of movement so that you can help other people understand who is God. You
Yeah.
know, like what does he have to say about being strong? Because there could be a woman that's afraid of exercising and being strong because she's afraid of what that might look like, you
Mhm.
know? Um, let's circle back to the Proverbs 31 woman
Yeah.
because I know that she has gotten a bad rap. she she has gotten a listen woman
She feels almost unattainable. I
unattainable.
think that for me, I think especially being, a mom of three kids and working full time and running a business, and Proverbs 31 feels real hard sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. If there was one verse I mean, I know Proverbs 31 woman covers a lot, but if there was one area, and I'm going to pull it up just for reference sake, and I tend to use either the NIRV translation, which is the New International Readers Version, or I'll use the New Living Translation. So the Proverbs 31 woman, I'm going to read just a couple of these verses from the NIRV. I'll start at verse 10. Who can find an excellent woman? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband trusts her completely. She gives him all the important things he needs. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She chooses wool and flax. She loves to work with her hands. She is like the ships of the traders. She brings her food from far away. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family. She also gives some to her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. She uses some of the money she earns to plant a vineyard. She gets ready to work hard. Her arms are strong. She sees that her trading earns a lot of money. Her lamp doesn't go out at night. I'm going to skip down. Verse 20, she opens her arms to those who are poor. She reaches out her hands to those who are needy. Skipping down to verse 23, her husband is respected at the city gate. There he takes his seat among the elders of the land. Down to verse 25, she puts on strength and honor as if they were her clothes. She can laugh at the days that are coming. She speaks wisely. She teaches faithfully. Um, of those verses, when you read it, what's the first thing that comes over you?
For me, verse 15, um, and I am looking at the NLT
Okay.
version. She gets up before dawn to prepare breakfast for her household and plan the day's work for her servant girls. Um, I'm just thinking about my own self, and what life is for me on a day to day basis. And reading all of Proverbs 31, like I said earlier, sometimes it feels very unattainable. And I think that for me to feel as though I can or am embodying this woman, verse 15 for me is really important, which is the preparation.
Mm,
As a mother and a speech pathologist and a fitness instructor and all the other things that come with being all of those things, preparation for me is just key. And in this verse, that means for me, preparation meaning I have to get up and spend time with God before anybody else. I have to get up and prepare for the day before anybody else is awake. By the time the people in my house are up, I'm already tired. Because if I don't do those things, so many other things will not happen in our home, and things that I value. I value just us being able to eat dinner at home or whatever it might be. And so, for me, verse 15, just being prepared really stands out for me because I think that's an important part of my life.
mm,
Just preparation and being prepared not only in our home, but for what God has for me. For a long time, I was like, oh, God, I want to go here. God, I want to do this. And God was like, like you're not ready for all that. You're not prepared.
Yeah.
And it is truly only
Mm.
when I have prepared my heart and mind and really let go of things that were not of Him is when I was able to receive all of those blessings and gifts that God had for me. Um, I'm trying to scroll down. There was another point for me that really stood out. Um, when she speaks, her words are wise and she gives instructions with kindness. You know, you talked a lot about strength. And in verse 26, her words being wise. I feel a lot of the time, you know, and I've told you this before, I would say yes to a whole lot of things without being like, God, I'm going to come to you first.
Mm.
I need to pray about that. I need to learn more about that. And I think that's especially for somebody like me. For me, that feels like I'm doing the courageous thing to not necessarily say yes when I feel like this is a good opportunity or this is good for me. But being able to say, God, I'm coming to you first and not just, ooh, I got to do something right away because somebody may be done. It doesn't matter. It
Yeah.
really doesn't matter.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about even as you say, like her words are wise. Um, I had written down kindness in our speech while our ministry is on mission. Just as you were kind of doing your introduction of whenever there's kindness, it's proof that you've spent time with God.
Yeah.
Because it's almost impossible to be kind or wise on our own. There's clever, we can be clever,
Uh-huh.
we can be
Uh-huh.
cordial, right? But then in the back of our mind, we're kind of to what you said of, oh, I really want to do that. Like we could say the things, but then our hearts are somewhere else.
Right.
And the only way for us to stay intentional, and I think you said it earlier, just being present, the only
Yeah.
way to be there is to make sure that we did start our day with God before
Hmm.
the rest of the world, wakes up. Um, I would love to know, just as a mother of three kids, um, even in prioritizing that time with God, starting your day with God, how do you how do you stay present to your kids and the ministry work? And I heard you say you're a speech pathologist and your husband and yourself and your circle of friends.
And my mom and dad. And my
And
like I mean,
right.
there's so many ands. There's so many ands.
Yeah.
Um, and I will tell you, Amia, this is all still very new to me.
Mm.
I used to just kind of work on things when I could. And I will tell you, since being at home for I'm coming up on a year within the pandemic, um, this has been very difficult for me because I'm at home. And when you're at home, you want to do home things, right? And so I really have had to discipline myself. And I think that is a huge key to being successful in whatever that means for you. Success for me is not monetary, but success for me means I'm happy.
Mm.
That's really it. And so for me to be happy, I have to discipline myself to do the things that I need to do. I don't, Amber, this is Amber, I don't like to live in disarray. You know, I like for things to be orderly. And so being at home, prioritizing things, prioritizing time to do things. You know, I had a conversation with my husband not too long ago. These are my soulful motion work hours. Like, and I have to adhere to what I set my time to do,
Mm.
because otherwise all those ands pop up and creep in. And to also just be intentional about spending time where you need to. Um, I value being a mom. I feel blessed that God gave me these little people, and that it's my job to take care of them. And so I do my best to do that and to intentionally make time to be present with them. I can be with them, but to be present, to hear them, to see them, to um, intentionally spend time with them is really important to me.
Yeah, there's a and the reason I posed the question that way with all the ands is because I think sometimes I've been trying to be really intentional about the way I state everything.
Mm,
Just the words that I use to describe my life, the words that I use to describe situations, the words that I use to declare and proclaim over anything, because of the fact that our words have so much power. And I recently learned that we have this creative power to list things as and or but.
mm,
And anything that you say that has but as the connection phrase, you undo the
that
first statement.
part. Yep.
Right? Right? Like, and I've been, it was in January, we do a family fast and we do the Daniel fast. And the phrase and is one of my takeaways from the Daniel fast since my kids were really little. But it's the ampersand symbol of just, and even if he doesn't, I will not bow down and worship you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Right? And even if not, he is still good, right?
It's still good.
So the
No
and,
but.
right, no but, the and
Mm-mm.
always supersedes whatever's coming. It is a connector, right? It is a conduit to get me from one place to the next. And even as you were explaining how you manage and prioritize the ands, the just the way you said it, it read Proverbs 31 woman, that I have to get up, I have to make sure that I've disciplined myself. And there are a lot of people that hear the word discipline and they're like, you lost me already.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Even
Many,
to hear you
many
say
times.
that, like, success for you, I love that you said success for me is to be happy, and that requires that I would discipline my days. um there is a something you said in the space of and oh, as you were just talking, I just saw, like, God speaks to me in, like, just visual word pictures. And just as you were talking of just managing your daily to-dos, sometimes those ands can feel like bricks falling on us because we're trying to come from underneath it. Oh, you said of taking care of yourself. I want to camp there for a second of just talking about what does it mean to take care of ourselves, because I think sometimes our self becomes the but. All the
Absolutely.
other things become the and we hold them with this, like, honor and dignity and kindness and joy, and these are my things, and some of our greatest blessings can become our burdens. But then we hold all these things over here as the and then we're in this hand as a butt, and we start tipping,
Yeah.
and the scale starts tipping. So in the space of, like, prioritizing and honoring yourself in order to be happy, in order to stay disciplined, to stay present, what does self-care look like for you?
So I am a person who needs time alone. That's how I recharge. It's how I get my energy back. Um, just spending time alone. And part of that early morning time for me is time in my closet. Literally, my actual closet. I have a window and I have a chair in there. and I just perch and quiet. Nobody comes in there. My kids know if mommy is in her closet,
Mm.
leave her alone. Like this is my time. And usually it will be in the morning. And I again have just found that if I don't care for myself in that way, I'm not able to care for my people in a way that I want to, in a way that is joyful and happy, and because I'm pouring from an empty cup, if I'm not able to recharge and just worship and spend time with God alone, that's very difficult for me to move forward in my day in a way and in a space that I want to. Um, I that has been a challenge at certain points in my life, especially during the pandemic too, like having time and space. When we first started, my husband's a teacher, and now we have three kids. So school was at home, and I'm like, oh, five people, we are all here, and everybody's trying to find their own corner of the house to do school.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult for me, but again, just that discipline to be able to say, Amber, if you want to be successful in what that means for you, being happy, right? Making sure that you give yourself time away to do that. Also, just thinking of Proverbs 31 here, it talks about her husband. And my husband is so wonderful, and he knows that about me. So he also knows, like, hey guys, mommy is gonna go here, or mommy needs her time. And he's so great where he will allow me to do that. Whether that be meal prepping or ordering groceries or whatever it might be, just having that support. For me is self-care, because if I don't have that piece, then I'm not able to do all the other things as well.
Yeah, you know what I love about that is because it even says in Proverbs 31 woman that like her husband receives favor
Hmm.
because of her. Like because of
I'm sorry. I love this. I joke with my husband all the time, but never thinking about Proverbs 31. One. And we just have these funny stories of like high school, where he was like, "Ooh, if I wasn't with you, I would have been over here doing that thing." And I was like, "See, that's why
right.
you was with me." And like, it's just so funny that this is coming up, but we say that all the time, like jokingly, but here it is.
Did y'all meet in high school?
We did.
Okay.
We
See, I told you like there are too many similarities between our stories and I'm like,
Yep, we did.
but it does. It says it's in verse 11. Her husband can trust her and she will greatly enrich his life.
I'm gonna tell him again today.
She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. And then it
All
goes
the day.
on, right? It goes on further. It says he receives favor at the city gate because of her reputation.
Listen, I got some words to say tonight. But yes, yes,
But it's so like, I mean, it's counterculture.
yes,
It is
absolutely.
counterculture, and it is exactly what you were just saying of just the prioritizing and being present in our homes so that we can find peace, taking care of our own selves, but also taking care of our children and taking care of our husband. And he gets favor. And then because he gets favor, he brings that home and it brings us peace. And it's cyclical.
Yep.
It just keeps going around that it literally pours one bucket into the other and it comes back around and feeds that cup that you were talking about.
And fills your home, you know, and it
It
just
fills your home.
fills your
Yeah.
home. I just had this conversation with my kids yesterday. Like, you guys are so blessed. And you don't understand it fully yet because they're so young.
Mm.
Um, but just this right here, it's such a blessing to even just have mom and dad here, you know. Um, But yeah, I mean, he blesses me on a daily basis. And I'm just grateful that the word says that I bless him too.
Yeah. Well, and I think that we in our culture, just generationally, but also race, it's worth people seeing just this solid gospel foundation love between a husband and a wife, that like there's no comparison between the husband and the wife, that there's no one upping each other, there's no, like there's a mutual respect and a mutual love and a mutual desire to want to pour into each other.
And like
Not,
genuinely
yeah,
happy
genuinely.
for my success,
Right.
which looks different from his.
Right. Right. And it's and our kids need to see that, so that, like I tell my children are older and they're, all college age and career age, and we've told them, like, whatever it is that you really want to do, like whatever is your greatest passion, let's figure out, does it require that you go to college, or does it require that you go to a trade school to learn and fine tune your skill set so that you can do something that you're really passionate about. And they get to watch my husband and I both serve in capacities where they are our greatest passions.
Mm.
And we both work professionally in an area that we really really enjoy. They watch us serve in church. They watch us like cut eyes at each other, like breathe hard one more time.
Yeah, right.
Dare you to leave another paper
Mhm.
towel on the counter, because
Yes, yes,
right. And so they see it without us saying anything, and I can tell that they know, okay, mommy and daddy must be mad at each other because they
yes.
can walk past each other
Yeah.
and say
And
thing.
but the best thing out of that is like you said, so against culture. Like two people can have a disagreement. If you leave this butter knife with this
Right.
peanut butter and jelly here one more time,
Right.
that like we're not done with each other because of that. And I feel like relationships are just so
Yeah.
fragile now, you know?
Yeah, well, and it goes back to like what we were talking about earlier, just how the enemy has this vendetta against women, to really have them think that
Yes.
they have to that they have to fend for themselves, that there isn't an Adam to come and protect her and to cover her. And so he's built up this false identity of, as women, I am just going to hold my own and do for myself, and I don't need a man, right? But the Bible, that
And I
is not the Bible, right? It's not the
not the
Bible.
Bible. And I think even a greater struggle for Black women.
Mhm.
I mean, you even go back into slavery where our men were taken away from us. And so then that is the mindset.
Right.
Even more why we need to be listening to God's word and really reading and listening to what this means. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It just, I mean, it is such a gift to young women to see successful women who love their husbands. I was going to say who are married, but I know somebody single would be like, wait a second, are you saying? So back up and let me just say, wherever God has you, he has you. But young women need to see women be successful, that if they are married, they know what God's plan is for their individual lives and the order of excellence that God has called to order of that woman's heart, her home, her husband, and where God stands. The order of that. Because if it's out of order, you
it's
were
not,
talking about like, success for me is to be happy. And I was talking to someone recently of like, I kind of cringe when I hear Christian circles say, no, you don't want happiness, you want joy, joy of the Lord. And I'm like, no, I want both.
I do. I want both.
I
I,
need both.
I
I
want
need
both.
both. And the Bible says that we can get glad. Like gladness is
And I don't
happiness.
have to choose. Yeah.
And I don't have to choose.
No,
I
not
get to
at
be
all.
joyful and I get to be glad, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I get to, and it doesn't mean that something has to, because there's this, and this is not even in the Bible. I think it's a worldly conversation that hyper spirituality has said that's not in the Bible. So just this conversation of like, no, happiness is not of God. Something had to happen for you to be happy, but joy comes from the Lord. But like giddy happiness,
I get that from the Lord. I don't know about anybody else.
right?
I get that from God. I get that from worship. I get that from my community. I get that from all of the things which cometh from the Lord.
When we were talking about movement being an instrument of worship, like I've seen you move.
I am the happiest
Right.
when I am moving. And even when I feel like maybe this is not the best day, but once that music turns on and once I get moving, in Jesus' name, amen, I am happy.
Right. And it is a happy that no one can rob you of
Or give me,
or give you.
not a human.
Right. And that's why I say, like, that kind of happy is one that is deep down, like a soul thirst that only God could pour into you. That when it bubbles up out of you, it's like a confetti cannon went off.
Hmm.
And no one can control where it goes. No one can control how much of it comes out. No one can control where it lands. It becomes highly contagious. And that, I mean, there, yes, joy. Like, let's go find joy. Let's make sure, because like joy is a fruit of the spirit that, like, when we've been rooted in him, it produces itself.
Right.
But happy, I think, is, and that's probably for another whole another podcast. Like, because I can get on a soapbox for the happy, because I'm like, I think as Beth Moore has a whole Bible study on, like, let's just take back happy. Let's just take back happy,
It's
because
like we could be happy.
happy has gotten a bad rap, just like the Proverbs 31 woman. She got a bad rap. Happy got bad rap. Proverbs 31 woman, happy, right here.
But we got him. We got him.
We
We
got
got him.
so there's one other thing that I wanted to talk about that we kind of hit it in a couple different veins, but I really want to go here for a second. This month, we are really going to be digging in and unpacking what it means to be strong, what it means to be courageous. But God has been asking me to unpack, not unpack, but like help people understand what does it mean to be strong and courageous and balanced in
Hmm.
the vein of being flexible. And you kind of hinted at it earlier of just like you wanting something, but God said, well, you're not ready for that yet because you're not prepared.
Hmm.
Right. So let's talk about what it means to be, I don't know, like I love analogies and just being in the fitness industry of recognizing the opportunity of strength physically and spiritually and the opportunity of flexibility both physically and spiritually. What does that look like? Just a woman on mission, a woman who wants to be present for her family and for her community that she gets to serve,
Yeah.
that has a definitive community of like soulful motion, as God said, these are your people. But what does it look like to be flexible in even in a season of preparation where God says not yet? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's talk about flexibility.
Um, I think God stretched me to the max 2020. Um, Technology is
Mm,
not my ministry. It's not my gift. It's it's not absolutely not what I want to do. And so throughout the pandemic, obviously everything is virtual, right? And I had to learn to teach classes virtually, and that also comes with registration and all the business things, right? But that for me, God stretching me and making me pliable to accept things that I never wanted to do.
Mm,
Having the mindset to really say, okay, God, what are you doing and why? You know, I really, really think that when God is preparing me for something, it comes in this boom, here it is, Amber. Now, how you going to take that?
mm,
Because you're praying for these things, and I'm giving you ways to prepare yourself for it. I really felt that this past year was God's way of really equipping me with all of the skills necessary for me to just achieve my goals and dreams.
mm,
I feel that, especially with all the ands that I hold, being balanced, people will ask me that all the time. Well, how do you balance being mom? And how do you balance this? And how do you balance that? And I really say I don't feel like it's a balancing act. When
mhm,
I think of balance, I think of things being equal or unequal or having all of these different things to hold on to. And really, what I've had to talk to people about is changing your mindset, not balancing, but switching. I'm mom right now.
mm.
Okay. If somebody's calling me about something self emotion related, it's gotta wait because I personally have made it my mission. I'm not going to do both. I've done that for a really long time. And that's where I start to feel burned out, or that something has become burdensome. And also, really thinking about expectations. Like, what is my expectation of being mom or being Soulful Motion founder and director, whatever it might be? And so, making sure that the expectations that I have are my own, not something that somebody has placed on me, and that they're also things that God would want for me at all times. Um, Being flexible hasn't always been a strength of mine, but it's absolutely something that's at the forefront of my mind, especially in this past year because everything changed. And
Yeah.
so, to be flexible is now a way of life.
Yeah. Several years ago, and I don't think I made it up. I'm not claiming that I made it up because I'm sure somebody will come back and say, you did not make that up. But it's this phrase of flexible people don't get bent out of shape. And I have clung to that for like, God,
Yeah,
the last 5 or 6 years. And maybe I learned it in like a yoga training or something, but
sounds
it's
like
just
it.
right, right. That's what I'm like. I don't think I made it up. If I did, go God, you know what I mean. But it's just a reality of to what you said of like, am I clinging to my own expectations of myself or something that someone placed on me, and I
Hmm.
don't even know what they're expecting, right? But like if I years ago, my husband and I learned in a leadership training that like if you suddenly find yourself in the ring with a heavyweight fighter, you probably have just upgraded to a heavyweight fighter.
Mm, that's
Like
good.
you're not gonna just happen to end up in the ring for this battle with somebody that's outside of your league. You know what I mean? Like you don't even realize, like you said, the 2020 stretched us and we were like, really? Okay, God
Yeah,
must know something that I don't know because here we go, right?
yeah, right.
But I had to laugh when you said like technology is not my ministry. I was teasing. I'm right with you. I had to go through all the changes and the upgrades of sound systems and equipment and I went just this past week to pick up a couple of additional pieces for my in-home studio.
Right.
And I walked in and the people knew me by name. They were like, hey, Amia. I was like, this is not a good thing. This is not my ministry.
I'm back for my batteries.
Right. And I'm like, man, can I just get a tax write off on all the new equipment? Because
Right.
come on, Jesus. Right. But I'm like, I joke about it, but I know that it has equipped us to literally be ready to just teach something that we had no idea that God needed us for,
And to be
and
available,
to be available.
not just in your city or town. Like
Come on.
now, any and everyone can join you and to learn more about God's goodness and to worship through movement.
Right. In the way that only you can do it.
Mm,
And
mm-hmm.
that's where I'm like, you know what? Some of the worst seasons become really good soil
Yeah,
for
yeah.
planting really good seed, like as stinky as it can be. It's
Hard
good
as
fertilizer,
2020 was. Yes,
real
yes.
good fertilizer. So, all right, well, we're going to wrap up this conversation. I would love for you to just let people know how can they find you, um, the types of classes that you offer. Where are you in all the spaces?
Yes, so you can find Soulful Motion Fitness at soulfulmotionfitness.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Soulful Motion. And if you have any questions or comments, want to reach out to me, you can do so at soulfulmotion@gmail.com.
So on Instagram is just Soulful Motion, but the website is soulfulmotionfitness.com.
Yes.
Okay, well, I will put all of that in the show notes. And are you, so you said you're teaching virtually right now. If they wanted to join a class, do they just go to the website to find information?
Yes, so you can access our classes online right now. I'm hoping that we'll be having some in-person classes outdoors soon. But yes, everything will be virtual at this time. There's also an option on our website for you to just do a drop-in class as well.
Cool. I'm gonna have to figure out when I'm not teaching that you are, so I can
Right.
come and take a class. Because
I
I'm
know.
like,
That's the hard
that's
part of
the
being an
hard part.
instructor. Like, I
Right.
want to go to your class and I
Right.
teach.
Right. I know, like I'm meeting, so because of the virtual space, I'm meeting so many instructors, whether we're exchanging
Mhm.
notes on like, go buy this cord, take that one back. And they're like,
Right.
when do you teach? And we're all teaching at the same time, right? Which is
Yep.
crazy because I'm like, could we all just like meet on Zoom one day and like make a schedule so we can like stagger our classes so we can cover everybody? You know what I mean? Because we're
Awesome.
all teaching at the same time.
Yes.
Um, well, Amber, I really do appreciate just your transparency and your honesty. And I'm in the process of gathering some women together, some of the women that I've been talking to for the podcast. And we're just all talking about like, how can we just keep these conversations going and really be able to just connect people with each other? Because I love that we're even though a lot of us are all in the fitness space, um, we all cover different components and different perspectives. And I know that God is intentional in saying like, yes, because I need you to do that thing, but I need you to do that thing, so that there's not a single soul that left is left untouched. But I don't think this is the last time that they will hear from you, because y'all, the pre-conversation stuff, we have like a bunch of podcasts we can cover.
Right.
Just in this podcast, I'm like, oh, that's a whole other episode. So,
Yes.
well, again, I appreciate you. And for those of y'all that have been listening, I really do pray that this conversation helped you, just shed some light on maybe one or two, three things in your life. The invitation is always that it would help you to adjust your focus, not ever from a finger pointing or finger wagging thing, but just a mindfulness nudge of just to reconsider whatever you've been thinking about. We know that 2020 stretched all of us. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. We're still in the middle of some social injustice that we're scratching our head trying to figure out what comes next. And I really do pray that this conversation and all these conversations feel a little bit like respite, um, and just a moment for you to take a huge inhale and a huge exhale and recognize that God is for you, not against you, and that you don't battle against flesh and blood.
Hmm.
That the enemy has, that he really does, like we said earlier, he's got a vendetta to just take us out. And we would do good to each other to not take each other out,
Yes.
to not play devil's advocate. He does not need an advocate. Trust me, he does not need an advocate, y'all. Let's not do that. Um, but let's see, like the Bible says, let's see how creative we can be in the ways that we encourage each other until Christ's return. Um, so, y'all, until we get to have a conversation again, I pray that you are blessed. I pray that your day is just filled with just hope and mercy of Christ. And I pray that you find some happy. Go
Yeah.
turn on a really good Michael Jackson song and just
And
dance.
move.
That's right. One
Let it
day,
out.
you know what? One day, me and Amber are going to co teach a class together for y'all and just like,
Good. It's gonna be so
right? It's
good.
going to be so good. Okay, I'm signing off because we'll keep talking. Y'all have a wonderfully blessed day and we'll see you to the next episode.
Bye bye.